Well, Vuyo Mvoko is Newzroom Afrika's contributing political editor. Let's get his thoughts now on what we've seen from the President today and just the debate over the State of the Nation address more generally. Vuyo, good afternoon to you, and along with everybody else, welcome to Newzroom Afrika.
Thank you.
The President's speaking now and in a way responding to the last 2 days of debate. What for you stood out from his speech today?
I think two things in the main, and I think, and I'm taking this for how he carried himself today, the issues he touched on, and so on and so forth. I think he took exception to how people made fun, but also used what he thought was a masterstroke, the creation of Tinswalo, right, in his State of the Nation address, because he thought, this person, you know, this is what is going to win me hearts and minds. But what followed subsequently, how the opposition laid into that Tinswalo, I think hurt him. And the second thing that I think hurt him was when people then said, talk about your own legacy, what you did, or what you have done over the past 5, 6 years. And I don't think those things, or the criticism, set well with him. And what he sought to do from start to finish today was to try and say, I'm having none of your criticism. And if you remember what he said right at the beginning, I've got a survey to actually back my claims up. And of course, I've got my Tinswalos in tow as well. So that for me was this, like, sum total of what he tried to do, and of course with that background I said at the beginning in mind.
I mean, it's quite interesting to see the Tinswalos, and I mean that's going to be one of the images, and I'm sure the ANC is going to use that in their campaign. I've been struck a little bit by some of the silliness we've seen over the last 2 days. I mean, Michael Bagram ordered out of the House yesterday, literally for extending his middle finger at a person who was speaking. I mean, that's astonishing. John Steenhuisen, I'm not going to make the same gesture that he did, but it's sort of saying that someone wasn't sort of right in the head, I suppose, would be one way of looking at it. Buti Manamela left balloons on the floor of Parliament yesterday for reasons that I still don't understand. I mean, I wonder if people don't take Parliament seriously anymore. There might be good reason for that, but there's just a bit of silliness around.
Well, I think, there's always that struggle where people try to be more dramatic, than others, whether it's for emphasis or just to be exceptional, or where others, keep their cool and stick to the facts to try and, have the upper hand over whoever may have said whatever appealed to them the most. But also the tendency among political parties to how they plot their speakers. They know that this one is going to use facts or has oratory skills and that kind of thing. But they know that this one isn't afraid to, kick things around, and hell may broke loose, nobody really cares. And that's how they would sort of plot their speakers. And in an election year, I suppose people would go to extremes. But remember also how well you speak, or how you capture the nation's, imagination makes a difference. Because remember, they're talking about list conferences that are coming up. The EFF just had its own. Julius Malema earlier, speaking to the media, was talking about how each and every MP or MPL is going to tell the EFF and the people of South Africa what they have done in the period that they were in the legislature, whether the national legislature or any provincial legislature, to actually improve their lives or to fight for what people deserve. So those, the appearances you saw and the ones you're going to see over the next few months are also about people essentially writing their CVs, leaving their mark, so to speak, so that they are not forgotten come the time when people are going to be put on those lists, and their ability to be actually up there so that they can make it to Parliament after elections.
There was a moment when the President was talking, and I thought maybe a sort of deliberate kind of written as a soundbite. I have lots of interest in things written as sound bites, and the way I captured the quote was like this: a profound change is taking place in our country, away from the noise and the spectacle. Our country is being steadily and fundamentally transformed for the better. Now, it's a great campaign line. It ties in with the idea of how the country has changed and transformed over 30 years. Do you think that's the life experience of how South Africans feel at this moment? It will be different for every voter, of course. But I wonder if people have lost hope, and maybe stats to say will say that what the President is saying is true.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's how people feel.
You know, it reminded me, in fact, when he said that line, he reminded me of his Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition. And I remember a few years ago, Alden St. Pierre was a political reporter assigned to the story, but there was an editor's briefing that preceded the open briefing. And this was on the eve of the South African delegation going to Davos to sell the country. And there was a lot of doom and gloom. This is when they, with what we are still putting up with, load shedding and a whole host of other things. But there was the mood was generally of despair. And we're trying to find out, and it was frustrating at the editors' meeting because nothing came of it. And then when the open briefing came, of course, needless to say, we didn't get much luck there either. And all we were asking these ministers was Minister Tito Mboweni was there. Pravin Gordhan and Ibrahim Patel. And I thought, but what is it that you are going to tell the world? When you arrive in Davos, what is the South African story that you are going to tell? Right? And then they kept on trying again, but nothing came of the exercise. And when we left the room, I remember saying to the minister, this is disappointing because I thought you'd give us, because remember, we as leaders in newsrooms have to try and understand where you guys are coming from. Perhaps there's things you're unable to say, but which are true. And he said, you know what? We are cutting through the noise. Forget what people are saying. You will see when the president speaks. I don't want to upstage him, in a State of the Nation address, but you will hear. Needless to say, years down the line, nothing came of that promise. And you're right, Stephen. It may well be true for a lot of people that things have indeed changed. But as some people have been raising the fact that you can only point to the past and not talk about what you're doing now to address the challenges that the people are facing here and now means that you've either run out of steam or you really have nothing new or positive to say. And of course, you're as good as your last.
Yeah. Paul Mashatile, Deputy President, there through all of the debate from what I could see, didn't speak from what I could see. I was trying to remember and sort of scratching my grey hair with my pen that the President's still searching for, as to whether or not David Mabuza used to speak regularly in these debates. But I was still struck. Paul Mashatile is a person who maybe wants to carve out a political identity for himself. This would have been a good chance to do that, and he didn't speak.
I doubt if anyone, strategically, of course, and I'm not saying this is the case, this is what actually happened in this instance, whether you, with the ANC being so vulnerable, and the President's approach and speech today, I think, attested to that, whether you would want to open another part of your body, which is vulnerable. And we're not talking about things that are true or false, but the perception thereof, or what people can use to have a go at you. Would you want to open, your wound, which is still fresh, by the way, considering the fact that the DA only a couple of days ago went and, laid a charge? I wouldn't do that either.
It's been interesting to watch how people have responded to all of this. And it does get quite personal in a way, some of these debates. And when you look at the divisions in our country, Parliament maybe focuses more on the divisions than how most people probably spend most of the day working with people across those divisions. Obviously, it depends where you are in our society. But there's a sort of, it seems to me, ought to be about the elections. And I don't know how much of it was constructive. Now, it might just be that that's politics, or that's politics in South Africa now.
That's asking a bit too much. In an election year, expecting opposition parties to not exploit the moment. And you could see, I mean, from the president today, him trying to even go to the extent of saying, oh, I've always been open. I've always spoken about our weaknesses, about our failures, and yes, there are times when we've gone backwards, when we've stood still, but in spite of all that, we've done the best that we could. Because he could see that the opposition was out to get them, and the fact that this is an election year played no small part. And that's why he kept on going back to elections. Don't use elections. And right at the end, he was there again, probably for emphasis. So he is aware, everybody is aware that it is an election year, so anything and everything actually goes.
We lost 2 soldiers in the DRC over the last 24 hours, and the President speaking a little bit about those who have fallen. He was defending the deployment of to the DRC quite strongly. And I mean, there are very strong arguments to go there. The people of Goma are part of SADC. We should look after them. There are arguments against it. Julius Malema today said, the EFF leader, as you point out, speaking earlier today, said that, in fact, we should not be sending soldiers to the DRC. Does the President feel the need to suddenly defend the deployment, do you think?
I think it did. I mean, on a day when we lost 2 of our compatriots and 3 have been injured, I mean, he would have had to give a valid, good enough reason why those soldiers, those people have died or are injured. So he was bound, he was duty bound as the head of state to actually speak to that. And of course, giving the explanation that we're part of SADC. It's not like we have an option to say we can't do it. But Julius Malema's answer to the question was an interesting one, because he was saying, no, we should be doing this, because he has to be seen to be consistent. However, he said, given the weaknesses he spoke about, of our defense force, we were really delivering them to the slaughterhouse, basically, which I thought was an interesting take, in that he wasn't condemning the move, which I can see other parties, taking a different line. Of course, we haven't heard what other parties have to say, but I thought, strategically, he was positioning himself differently from what I think other political parties will do.
Obviously, the President speaking about Gaza as well, and significant developments on that internationally over the last little while. It seems that more and more countries are coming perhaps closer to South Africa's point of view, if I can put it like that, with that statement from Canada, New Zealand and Australia today. But the President talking about that, and obviously the issue of Gaza feeds into our elections to an extent. I mean, if we sort of put the principle to one side for the moment, and there's a strong principle in what South Africa's government has done, it also helps to unify the ANC a little bit and divide the DA. There's some useful politics there.
I think it does, and hopefully when we talk about where to from now, we'll talk about this. It does unify the ANC, but when it comes to an election, the ANC is almost always unified. That's the one period that brings them together, because people know what is at stake. Because if the ANC doesn't make it to Parliament or provincial legislatures, it means fewer jobs, less influence, less patronage to dispense, and all those things. So it's the one time the ANC, and this is going to happen when on the 24th the ANC launches its election manifesto. Those people who will gather at Moses Mabhida Stadium are going to sing one song. They are going to read from the same hymn book. They are going to recite the same slogans. They are going to be as united as they have ever been. The issue really is whether those who will not be there but who will help them, because remember, talking about a party of less than a million, signed up and members, but then millions get to vote for that political party. It is about whether, when the ANC leaves Moses Mabhida on the 24th, they will have a coherent message that will say to South Africans, the ANC has indeed changed for the better, or at the very least, that there is hope that they will be able to do so. And that is what is going to make the difference. Or the opposite, of course, is also true. Whether the opposition, and I'm saying collectively, has done enough or has inflicted enough damage or has capitalized on the damage that the ANC has inflicted, on itself to actually win over more people this time around than has ever been the case before in the history of elections in this country.
It's interesting that we've had the EFF manifesto launch. We're going to have the DA manifesto launch. They're the only one of the big four not to do it at the Moses Mabhida
2 days' time.
2 days' time. We've got the ANC manifesto launch already scheduled. The only thing that's missing is an election date.
Well, I think, he's probably keeping it himself, for good reasons.
Yeah.
And he's not flouting any law, for that matter. But also because if you look at it, given what we know or what has been common practice over the years, it's unlikely we'll have an election by May. Right, for example, dangerous to have an election in winter, because it may just mess things up. So we still have a good few months still before we go to an election, but everyone knows that the election period has started in earnest. It doesn't stop anyone from doing anything, and that's exactly what we're going to be confronted with over the next few months.
Vuyo Mvoko, thanks very much indeed. We appreciate it.